there's a cat standing directly in front of my camera.
Bruh.
Talk about disguise.
Yeah, other than that, we're good to go. Welcome back, everyone, to the Idiots on the Airwave podcast, where today it will be two idiots and one smart person with a guest, and my cat is scratching up my screen. Please stop. Anyways, we're joined here by Kiera, which is not how you pronounce her name, but it is how I pronounce the name. Anyways, our special guest here is the author. I got the author, I guess you would call it, of the Inside the Teen Mind course and blog. Is it the website? All right, I don't know what these terms
Yes.
are. I guess first things would be
How are you?
what's the roadmap for the site and course at this point in time?
So 2 years ago, I started writing blog posts on Google Docs, and that all came from this cognitive dissonance that I was having as a teen. My relationship with my parents is wonderful, and I feel very, very fortunate that we have such an open and trusting, loving relationship. But it's not the case with my friends and many of their parents. And there's just so much strain and tension and miscommunication. And I knew that I had to help. Something needed to change. I wanted to give parents insights into the teen mind because I felt that it could really benefit their relationships with their teens. And that's, not only for my friends, but for teens everywhere. And from there, I created a course, and the course focuses on communication and listening. It focuses on different strategies that you can use to improve your relationship with your teen. And it's just filled with really unique perspectives that you're not going to get anywhere else because this is a course created by a teen. As far as I know, it's the only one out there. And it's 6 weeks. It's designed to be easy for busy parents so that they can do it while they're on their way to work or cooking dinner. And it's just designed to really help transform that relationship with your teens so you can live a happy life into adulthood with them and not worry about some of these problems that we hear between teens and parents.
So then to follow up on stuff like that, was there any like specific moment where you like really felt that like, oh, I need to do this, or any specific instance that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, I remember I was heading home. I was carpooling with a friend, heading home from a class, and her dad was talking about something, and I remember very distinctly she leaned over to me and she goes, "I'm so sorry about my dad." I was like, "Why are you apologizing?" Like, what he had said, and I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but what he had said was not embarrassing. It wasn't weird or anything, but it was truly just she felt that her dad shouldn't be interfering in our carpool ride back. And I just thought that was so weird. And subsequently, I remember hearing from so many peers, my mom is so strict. My dad doesn't care about me. One of the really common refrains I've been hearing lately, and just in my teen years in general, has been, "My parents don't love me." And I don't know if that's a ploy for attention. I don't know if that's a teen that really does feel misunderstood by their parents. But I think fundamentally, so many teens hear the negativity and all of the, like, you need to go do your chores, all these reminders, parents trying to be helpful, but it comes across so negatively. And I think teens take it from, I'm being asked to do my chores, I'm not being praised, I'm not being recognized for my work, and they take it to, clearly that means they don't love me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's so sad.
Yeah. So your course is mostly for the parents, correct? Like that's the
Yes.
main drive. So if there's anything you could share with teenagers about this, what would you say to the teens?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would tell any teen that's listening that your parent really does care about you. and fundamentally they want what's best for you, and they see so many trajectories for your life, and they want to help you achieve the best trajectory. And having lived the teen years out, being an adult, they have a lot of experience, and it's important to listen to that and not to brush off their advice, because so many times that advice can really change your life and help you in every way. So really, truly, listen to your parents. Your parents are there to help you, and know that they love you very much.
So with the 6 week course, like,
Mm-hmm.
everything. So going forward in the future, do you want to like add on to the course? Do you just think more blogs, or just in general? I'm curious because I thought it was quite a good thing, and I was wondering if you have any plans for expanding upon this.
Yeah. At the moment, I'm planning and contemplating on launching a sort of sister sibling course for teens. So I'd have a parent course and then a teen course alongside it. So it'd be designed that the parent could take the course while their teen is also taking a similar course, and it's just adjusted for teens. And so that at the moment is my plan. And then I've also thought about creating subsequent courses. I'm really passionate about behavior and affecting behavior through positive reinforcement, understanding how we as humans can change our behavior and our actions so that we can positively influence others. And I just think that that really can be so beneficial in parent-teen relationships. So that's an avenue I want to explore. In addition to, I think, expanding on my listening module and turning that into a separate course in and of
Mm.
itself, because it's so powerful. Listening has the power to absolutely transform any relationship.
Um, so then I might ask, for my own curiosity, what
Yeah.
what type of stuff would you talk about in the sibling course? Because of course, um, I'm mostly a single child, so I find it interesting, but not because it's helpful towards me.
Yeah. So in the teen course, like I haven't fleshed anything out yet, but I think I would probably discuss similar things like listening strategies, how you can listen to your parent, how you can like filter through, kind of take out the negativity that sometimes comes through when parents are trying to, help you day to day, do your homework, get caught up on chores, and so forth. How to filter through that negativity and see that they really are trying to help you, and maybe it's just not being expressed in the best way. And additionally, I think I would focus on the changes, the neurological changes that are happening in the teen brain. It is absolutely incredible how much our brains change during the teen years. It's almost as much as when you're a newborn and your brain is like transforming every single day and adding new synapses and growing truly exponentially. It's very similar in the teen years. And I think that many teens kind of don't quite understand what's going on. And like, I know for myself, like emotions and so forth can just be like really wild. And so providing research, I think, into that in the teen course would definitely be beneficial. And then I also intend to talk about the ape brain and the reptile brain, which is really fascinating. So I think that is kind of, a couple ideas I've had so far for that course.
So then an off the cusp question for both of you, which is really weird. Because again, being an only child, this is not something I thought of. Do you think parents have a favorite child?
That was a great question. I feel like Daniel can answer this better than I could. My answer is no.
So I don't think I could answer this nearly as well as I think you'd. The short answer is no, uh, which of course implies there's a long answer, right? Which there is, and because it's a no, but because it's weird because I think the idea of a favorite child largely depends on how from my experience, it is largely dependent on how the family structure is like set up from the start, right? And it's dependent on how differently the kids are raised. Like, so, I'm the oldest of 13. and I think I'm the oldest six. So me, my three sisters, and my first two brothers are we are raised very differently from the rest of the kids, and that's partly because number seven down are all part of a new generation. It's not they're not Gen Z, they're Gen what's it Alpha? I think it's
Alpha.
called now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's what it was because they say that the cutoff it starts at like 2012, and my
Wow.
seventh brother is born in December of 2012. So um, it's it's dependent on how the dynamic of the family functions because my parents parent my younger siblings far differently than they parented like myself and my sisters. Like they are far less strict on certain things, and it makes no sense because I grew up in a I guess to put it very broadly, a far firmer household. And this is not it's not like a negative connotation at all. This isn't like, oh, they were strict and mean and nasty, This is more of a it's they uh it was just a firmer household. Stuff that you knew what not to do, and like here I see my siblings like tearing up all these Curious George books that I was taught to not rip to pieces because they were awesome to read with dad and mom, and I'm like, what the heck, guys? Uh, but it's not. But I guess I digress a little bit. To answer the question, it's not. There's not a favorite child, because because you have to raise every child differently,
Mhm.
depending on their needs. Like all of us kids are like really different. Like I am the oldest. I'm already 18. I want to bail. I want to get out of the house. I want to live in a space where I can have absolute quiet so I can just record as much content on music and gaming as I want. I want to work on this podcast more. I want to do all these things for my creative endeavors. My sisters have their own things. My brothers have their own things. We're all very different. And so it's, it's very, it's not that there's a favorite child. It's just that every child has a a different set of needs that need to be addressed, and it's this notion of a favorite child. It's not that there's a favorite child. It's that some children's needs are easier to meet than others, and parents don't realize that until they actually realize that. And for some kids, it takes longer for them to realize that some needs that other kids' needs need to be met, but it's a process for them to figure out what those needs are. Because when they're like 4 or 5, they're still trying to figure out who they are. But when
Mhm.
they turn 7, 8, 9, it's like, okay, now I have an idea of what I want to do. Like my little brother Andrew, he wanted to do parkour for a while because that was a great way to relieve stress for him. Now he programs games because it's an incredible output of his creativity in a way that scratches that itch in his brain the right way. And all my brothers have all this different stuff, and it's um, some kids think that they are not the favorite child because their needs are more difficult to meet than others, and it's misconstrued as favoritism. In reality, it's the parents still trying to do their best at parenting because you know as much as we are all the same in my family, we are all very much not the same. you know?
Yeah, I think you highlighted something really important there, which is individuals and their needs, especially as children and teens. And it's just amazing how different each individual is and how much we transform from children into teens, into adults. And I think that something that's important for parents to realize is that you can look at all the parenting manuals out there, all the parenting books and so forth, but fundamentally your teen, your child is an individual, and you have to really, tailor your parenting style to them.
Um, so you brought up like parenting manuals and stuff, and I mean you wrote a course, so I feel like you have some knowledge of them. So what is your overall opinion of stuff like parenting guides and stuff? Because it's something that I've never been exposed to because again, um, just the one of me.
Yeah. Overall, my opinion on like parenting. books and so forth, I think that most people get it right. And I think that fundamentally it really comes down to three things that I talk about extensively in my course. And that is credibility. Parents need to be credible with their teens, which basically means like if you give advice, you have to be willing to back it up with either like, oh, like this is where this advice is coming from. I read about it here, or this was part of my experience, or this was someone else's experience, and that can help because I think often when parents just come across with like this is the way to do it, and they don't give any reason, teens start to doubt their parents' credibility, and often they will just kind of throw it out and do their own thing, even if their parents are absolutely right. And the second thing that I talk about extensively is great. I am blanking. Sorry.
Which
Um,
module?
it's in the second module. Let's see, credibility. I was gonna figure out an acronym.
Flexibility, credibility, flexibility, and empathy.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Um, well, the second thing is flexibility because, as Daniel mentioned, every teen, every child is an individual, and parents have to be willing to adapt and change their parenting methods as they need to. And the third is empathy because modern teens, are going through challenges that prior generations have never faced, and they're also encountering the very same challenges that every generation faces growing up. And having empathy and holding space for your teen and validating what they're going through while providing support is really an excellent way to further build credibility and also strengthen your relationship.
So this is another question for the class.
Yeah.
You talked about this in some of your modules. Is the idea of forgetting what it's like to be a teen, and I just find that interesting. I want to ask why you guys think that is, because as somebody who went through high school, as most people do, you tend to age through high school.
Yeah.
When I started, I was like, wow, all these older teenagers, they know what's going on. They're up there. And now that I'm here, I'm like, oh wow, yeah. No, we don't. We're just as confused, but we're better at not showing it. So to me, it's kind of
Word.
weird, the idea that like forget how you were back then. I see that among like myself, but like I accept the fact that I was a cringy child. I was a cringy freshman, like I think everybody really was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where and why do you think that distinction comes in, where you can kind of like forget what it was like to be younger?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Um, I think that most people forget what it was like to be younger. They forget when life gets really busy. Um, and I also think that I don't know. I don't have experience as an adult,
How
so
dare you?
it's all hard to answer from a adult perspective. But I know from my teen perspective, like I used to know exactly what like life as a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old looks like, and now I have vague memories. And I think that that's largely because of all the new memories and like frontal cortex is growing, and so forth. My brain is changing, and the long-term memories, like an inside out, kind of being thrown out. So I'm holding on to some, but not all of them. And I think that's what happens for parents too, even more so, because like all of a sudden you're not just caring for yourself, but you're also caring for another person, and you're not only caring for them, but you're responsible for raising them and for like making sure they turn out okay. And I think that in that a lot of parents lose more memory potentially of what it was like for them to be teens, and that can also be a huge factor. I think why parents tend to lose memory of what it's like to be a teen, or just adults in general. I think a lot of people aren't proud of the way that they behaved as teenagers, if I had to guess. I know that I've like certainly had some moments where I'm like, ooh, would love to just be able to erase that out of my personal history book. And, while not many other people may remember, I certainly do. And I think a lot of parents like just try to forget about it and push it out. And they kind of go, well, I made mistakes. I'm going to make sure my teen doesn't make those mistakes. But then at the same time, like they don't talk about it, and they kind of pretend it didn't happen. They pretend that they were a perfect team, and that they're perfect adults. And I think that's a really big pitfall that I've seen a lot of parents make with their teens. And the second you do that, your teen can see through it. Like maybe as children they couldn't, but as a teen they certainly can. They know that you weren't perfect, and the second you try to behave like you were and you aren't honest and you don't admit that you make mistakes, you're losing credibility with your teen. So I think, I don't know, it's kind of a long answer, but
Yeah, what was the question again? Did it pertain to me at all?
I mean, if you want to answer, it's basically where and why do you think like adults can kind of forget what it was like to be a teen?
Well, I would say firstly that it's important to note that they deny that they are forgetting that they were a teen. Um, at least that's my experience, is that they tend to uh, deny that they're forgetting it. And in my experience as well, I don't think a lot of them are actually forgetting. The problem is it's weird. I don't think actually that any parent has actually forgotten what it's like to be a teen, especially in this day and age with our parents who are like, our parents are all Gen X people. And right now, I know for certain that all of my friends' parents who are Gen X or the generation prior to it, if my friends are, from the younger side of their big families, um, their parents are actually being reminded even more about what it was like to be a teen by just how amplified everything is. The world has amplified every aspect of life, and especially all the aspects of the young life, because the youth are the most susceptible to literally anything. And so it's not that they have forgotten how to be teens; it's that they don't have a reference point. It's something that Kiera touched on as well. My parents and I have talked about this extensively, me and my dad especially. My dad has no idea what he's doing, which, no, and I don't mean that in a literal sense. I just mean that he is floundering in this world as much as I am because of how fast everything has moved. Like, it's absurd how everything in life has just kind of gotten to the point where you don't know. Well, you don't really know what's going on anymore because like next week is like completely the opposite from last week. But it's I'm not completely answering the question properly. It's more so just that they have lost all reference because everything that was once credible in their lives is now, it hasn't lost credibility. It's just lost purpose and meaning. Their old ways have been abolished for them, and it didn't come with time that it faded away. It didn't fade away. It just poofed. It just disappeared in an instant, and they're just like, "Wait, what?" So that's been my experience with it all. I don't actually think that parents have forgotten how to be teens. I think that they have just we're just very different to parents nowadays than regular children, like preteens. And granted, that's normal. Like, oh, no kidding, Daniel. Like, of course, I'm going to be different to raise than, an 8-year-old. But it's so much more different than how it used to be. It's one of those things where it's not even the parents' fault, really. It's honestly nobody's fault, really. Neither the parents nor the teens. There's a lot of outside factors, I believe, that come into play when it comes to banking on trust that is no longer viable, I suppose.
So then another question I have is this idea of respect to teenagers, which I know is a weird idea, but it's just interesting because I recently turned 18. And it's weird because I don't feel different, and I'm not different. I just happen to rotate around the world, another time. But
Yep.
it's weird to now think about the
It's
fact.
rotate around the sun. It's rotating around the sun.
We count years differently then. So um,
I'm just not gonna question any of this then. All right.
but it's this idea of I've basically crossed an arbitrary line, and
Yes.
now I'm an adult. And it's like, okay, yeah, you gotta choose an arbitrary line at some point. But to me, it's kind of weird the idea that like now I have to be treated differently, in the
Hmm.
sense of like respect and stuff. And it's weird to me because again, I don't feel different. So I'm wondering if you think that there is a way, and sometimes that teenagers, they're not adults. Let's be honest here. Even 18-year-olds aren't
Oh
really
yeah.
adults. We're not.
Even 19-year-olds.
Yeah, it's like we're really not that much better than the rest of the teens. Um, but there's this weird sense that I feel sometimes like they can just be treated as children. Like they are
Hmm.
children, but like they can be treated like they haven't matured since their
Yes.
like preteen days. And I don't know if that's something you've noticed or that's something that you think people should be aware of,
Absolutely.
or your thoughts on that.
No, I completely agree with what you said. Um, I think that it's so difficult. Like my mom is often remarked, oh, she used to be like a little baby, and I used to be able to hold her in my arms, and now she's all grown up. And I'm like, it's very sweet and sentimental. But some parents really get stuck in that, and they start to treat their teens, and like 18-year-olds, like they're still five. And I remember a friend of mine saying, my mom still talks to me like I'm in kindergarten and I'm an adult. And I think taking the adult part out of it, parents don't recognize that the teen years are a transition. The teen years really aren't bad or good. They have the potential to be, but they aren't inherently bad or good. They're just a transition. It's a transition from childhood to adulthood. And it's a time where teens are going to be trying out new things and they're trying to make sense of who they are, what opinions they hold about the world. They're trying to differentiate themselves from their parents, become their own person, but fundamentally they also need that support and love from their parents. So it's a weird time for sure. But I think so often, like parents will either treat their teens as adults or children, and they can't play that ebb and flow game that teens really need.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that each teen is an individual, as we've discussed, and there are some teens who are going to do really well with a lot of responsibility and similar amounts of freedom. But there's other teens that are going to do really, really poorly with a lot of responsibility and freedom. Um, and so it really just boils down to like actively evaluating your team's needs and also their abilities. Um, and so I think like fundamentally recognizing the teen years as a transition and being willing to support your team actively and flexibly is really the best way to go. I don't know if flexibly is a word. With flexibility. We'll say that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. So another question, and this is just a fun question that I like to ask people who work on things because this is something I come across a lot. Is there anything you found in your research and writing that you found really interested that like either you couldn't fit into the course or it just
Uh-huh.
wasn't really relevant but you found interesting? Is there anything like that you came across that you think would be fun to share?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So in my research, it like I don't know, in my life research, I feel like I learned so much about myself, and also about the world in my research on teens and parents, and especially for this course. I think the coolest thing and like something I would have really liked to fit in, but I just like as you said, didn't know where I was gonna quite fit in, is sleep. I know that sounds silly, but um, it's insane. Like I listened to a 20-hour audiobook written by a sleep expert, Matthew Walker, and it was insane. Like I would go out every morning and I would just listen to 10 minutes. And it took me a couple months to get through, but it was transformational in the way that I view sleep and also in how I view people's behavior, especially for teens. Because teens, it's fascinating. In the teen years, our brains switch from being like early birds,
Mm.
heard of the toddlers who get up at 6 a.m. Their parents like, I want to sleep some more. The toddler's like, no, I'm up. You better get up. I'm hungry. I want to do stuff. And for teens, it switches. It completely switches. And teens start becoming night owls. And like something I learned about was night owls are not a bad thing. Our society views them as a bad thing, but they're not a bad thing. It's just a different way that they operate. And I myself, I don't know, I kind of vacillate between being a night owl and a early morning bird. But
I am 100% a night owl. If you get me up in the morning nowadays, I am just not going to wake up until 8 o'clock because
yeah,
with how bad my sleep state is at the moment, I'm just not getting up. I'll stay up till like midnight working on music, but I'm to hell with getting up at 4 in the morning to do live streams and stuff. I can't do that anymore.
yeah, no, and that is such a good example of the teen brain because like we physically cannot get up that early without severe damage to our brains. And there's so many studies out there that show that for teens, like it's totally natural for them to stay up until 12 and like wake up again at 12, 12 in the morning or afternoon. Um, but something that was really fascinating was the early morning sleep, reading about early morning sleep and how beneficial it is. Because during that time, our brain operates between non-REM sleep and REM sleep. And the REM sleep is like our dreaming sleep. It's what supports emotional regulation. It also helps us to process events that have happened throughout the course of our lives and the previous day. And then non-REM sleep is kind of, I don't know, the image that I was taught was like imagine a pair of cutting shears and that's your brain. It goes through and it's trimming out memories throughout the night that like you don't need and it's keeping the ones that you do. So you kind of end up with this nice like trimmed tree when you wake up. At least that's the goal. But if you don't sleep in enough, especially for teens, they're missing out on that NREM sleep, on like clearing out the cobwebs in your brain, and they're also missing out on the REM sleep, which is responsible for good social skills and like focus and not being super tired throughout the day, which is something that I hear from all of my friends at the high school that I go to, which like we have to be there at 7:45 each morning. They're missing out on all that early morning and late morning sleep that they need so desperately. And what do I see? I see kids sleeping in class. I see kids who are super irritable, kids who literally cannot focus on what's going on. And what they need is the sleep. And it also, like that lack of sleep. Oh, okay, he's gone.
All right, bye, Daniel.
That lack of sleep also causes a lot of irritability. It can increase arguments. And so I think so much of the teen behavior and like recklessness, crimes, drugs, all that stuff ties back to sleep, which is crazy. So essentially, if your teen is getting good sleep, and good sleep is 8 to 10 hours, specifically like going to bed later, waking up later, then they are less likely to commit crimes. They're more likely to have good grades in school. Their memory is better. They're happier. Mental health is significantly improved. And I feel like that's something everyone needs to know about because in our society, we devalue sleep a lot. And we're like, oh, we can get by with 4 hours. Totally fine. It's not fine. Everyone needs sleep, and teens are the biggest like non-exception to that. Like
Yeah.
teens need quite possibly the most sleep of anyone. Um, so yeah, that was something I came across. I was like, oh man, so good, so important, and definitely something I'm going to try to work into my course in the future.
Mm-hmm. Um. So then, when you're approaching this stuff, this might be a weird question, but is there like a specific, like academic field you like to look at it through? Like, is it behavioral
Oh,
science, psychology?
yeah,
I don't know if those are actually different. I'm not gonna lie, or biology, the way we grow. Was there like,
yeah.
I know you put them all together and they all blended quite nicely, but there like one specific thing that you've always been interested in that kind of launched you into this, or what?
That's a great question. So it would be behavioral science for sure. And I think behavioral science falls into the umbrella of psychology. But I started off at the very beginning. I was 7 or 8, when my aunt came home from college, and she studied in animal behavior and taught me the ins and outs of animal behavior and also clicker training, which is basically a marker, and it's a positive marker. It tells the animal when it's done something right, and then you reinforce them. So, anyways, she taught me that. I went home. I did not have a dog. I trained my chickens. That's another story. It was a fun time, but it sparked this lifelong passion for psychology, specifically behavior, and understanding how, as I was mentioning earlier, how our interactions, our words affect others and how it affects their behavior, and how we can change our own actions and words to change others for the better. So that was really something that catapulted me into that field of research. And also, I just saw this so much miscommunication in the teen years, so many problems. And I was like, I feel like if people knew the principles of behavioral science and things that I learned when I was like training my own dogs, if we translated that over to the human world, there is so much overlap. And no, you're not training your team to be a dog. Like, that's not the idea here at all. But there is so much beneficial information that I felt like parents could benefit from, and teens too. I feel like everyone can benefit from it. So from there, I'm planning to go into psychology. That
Mm-hmm.
is currently my passion and what I want to do. But yeah, that's kind of what inspired this, and what was really like what's been the driving force and the motivation for me.
So then I might, if I might ask, what do you think is the driving force of this communication? Do you think it's stubbornness from either side of not wanting to admit that maybe they miscommunicated something? Is it just them not interested really in what the other one's saying? What do you think?
Okay, so it's definitely twofold, in my opinion. I'd be curious to hear your opinion on this. I think that teens stop listening to their parents. So like, oh, I'm almost 18. I can think for myself now. In some cases, like I can drive a car. I'm more independent. Um, and a lot of teens don't feel heard or understood by their parents. So then they stop listening to their parents. And they instead listen to their friends. And their friends are often very anti parent. And they're like, oh, well, like your parents don't understand you. They don't understand what's going on in your life. And well, it's sometimes true. It kind of misses the mark.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one aspect with the teens. They just kind of stop listening to their parents. They don't think that their parents' advice is trustworthy, especially if their parents aren't being credible. Um, and then on the parent side, I think that parents often are kind of like checking boxes when it comes to spending time with their children. Not in all cases, not for every parent, but I've definitely seen that where it's like, okay, I asked my teen how their day was at school. Great, I'm going to go make dinner now. And like parents are busy, so I understand that. But at the same time, that comes across. And I think that trying to check a box and not actually be interested in your teen's life. That's something I was talking about recently. Not being interested in your teen's life, not expressing interest, and like remembering who their friends' names are, what classes they had, what they're enjoying about the class, which teacher do they like all those things that you would try to remember in a friendship with someone that you care about. Like, you need to remember with your teen too, especially. Um, and so I think that those two things really collide in the teen years and can be quite prominent, and that can be a source of a lot of miscommunication.
Yeah. For me, adding on to what you said, I think it
Yeah.
can also come down to a teen's desire for independence and the adults like acknowledgement of their dependence, where
Uh,
teens very much want to have a lot of freedoms because we like to think of ourselves as grown-ups. We're not, but we like
we're
to
not.
think about it like we are. So as we try and like get more independence and start doing our own thing, as we should be doing at this age, I think that the parents can kind of be like, okay, calm down. You're not ready for some of this, and for their own good, they're trying to get us to stop and stuff. But I think that can come into conflict and make it feel like for the teen that they just want to control them, whereas the adults are in general just trying to stop us from doing something stupid, or of all
Mhm.
being like don't go down this path. So I think it's kind of this negative feedback loop where the parents, for good reasons but with negative consequences, want to, I guess, yeah, control their teens in a way. Not like necessarily always in a controlling manner, but they want to regulate their behavior and be like, hey, you shouldn't, this is not a good path to go down. But for the teen, that just feels like they're being like, oh, you're a kid, what do you know? And I think that's also, as we're talking about treating them like kids, is also something. Something I've noticed and I think is always good is that it's good to explain stuff, especially to your teenager. Because that's something that, and this might just be a personal thing, but throughout everything, I hate it when people don't explain something and just give me something, because I'm like, I don't. Okay, I just want to know why, though. That's all I really care about. I'll do it.
Yes.
I just want to know why. But I think adults and parents, being, busy as they are just kind of like, I know better. And they often do, so they don't feel they have to justify it to someone they
Oh,
see as the dependent one. But in
that is
our
so
strive
true.
to be independent, really, we just want an explanation for it.
That
Well,
is such a good point. Yeah, I think you hit the head on the nail, Miguel. I mean,
it, in my experience, there's been times when adults, um, okay, I have a very odd experience with life because I'm the oldest of a large family, and I've spent the longest time around people older than me,
Mm-hmm.
mostly older family members. So I've always been very good at a young age with for talking to adults in a general sense, and um, so it's always been rough to me when there's an adult that acts um, pretentious enough to where he either denies or doubts my abilities to do something. Like when I needed to assist with some tech issues with my church because I know my way around technology and computers and all this sound stuff that needed to happen in my church. Um, like there was an adult there that would help me through it and teach me all the stuff so that I knew what to do in case he wasn't there. And then there were other adults who thought they knew what they were doing and completely screwed up my design. It was about 2 months into something that we were doing. Um, some idiot thought he knew what he was doing and screwed the design up so badly that the thing that we were doing was an absolute catastrophe. And I was furious because I was like, I know what I'm doing. Why did you have to go and ruin this thing that I know what I'm doing because I was taught how to do this thing? And I still think that it's because I was younger and people don't trust me very much. But like I've always been put in these positions of like high um, trust, and
Mm-hmm.
it's never and there's always still somebody out there who's just like ready to like but he's not trustworthy, and I'm like I'd like to see you do better. And there's another thing about that is that we teens, because like you said, Miguel, we like to think we're adults, but we're not. And the way we manifest that is by back talking, and it's something that a lot of adults find incredibly offensive, and they use it as a means to do whatever they want, basically, because they don't trust us to not backtalk them. And in the situations that I've been in, I just backtalk people because I don't care. But I'm also a very defiant person by nature. Like if I think an order is stupid, I'm not going to do it because it's a stupid order. I don't care who's giving the order. It's if it's stupid and I don't get an explanation, like a
Mm-hmm.
really good explanation, I'm not going to do it. Like you said, like I hate it when people don't explain things to me. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like because if you're not going to explain what you're doing, get some other sucker to do the job because I'm not unintelligent. Don't insult my intelligence. I have more intelligence than you think. And it's an odd conundrum because I don't think people there's some people that give me credibility and there's others who don't. So it's I don't know. It's all situational, I suppose.
So I guess as we'll have to start wrapping this up soon. What has been some responses to your course that you found insightful? Has there been anything that parents have told you or anything that you find helpful that like you would like to add on or be like, here's a nuance or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of parents have told me just how insightful the course is and how many unique things there are in the course that they were not anticipating. They were really just expecting run of the mill sort of parenting advice. But they said that my course had actually really helpful tips and ideas that they could see transforming their relationship with their teen, which was incredibly validating to hear. Um, I think so often we put projects out in the world, we don't know if they're going to be helpful or not. But I knew that with my research and the time that I put in, I knew that there was something there. So it was nice to hear that parents felt similarly. And actually, the teen response that I got on my course was really incredible. I had some really amazing people who looked at my course and gave me feedback. And the module that everyone highlighted unanimously was the listening module. And I think that really underscores how poor our listening skills are, as teens and also as parents,
Mm-hmm.
and how much we need to change that. Because when you change the communication, you change the relationship. And the two really go hand in hand. If you have good communication, you have a good relationship. Um, and if you don't have good communication, the relationship isn't there either. So I feel like that was very insightful as well. Listening is incredibly important.
Um, do you think that one of the reasons that your course was so helpful to many parents is because it also gave, I guess, practical advice? Again, as somebody who hasn't really read a lot of parenting manuals, from what I've observed about stuff that tends like that, it tends to be quite vague, I guess, or like
Vague
it's
and
just
pithy.
like ideas out there. Do you think that giving the practical advice like you do it in the course significantly helps?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if you read something and you understand how to apply it and you feel that it actually fits your situation, you're more likely to take action on it. And when you're more likely to take action, then change happens. And that change can fuel motivation to improve things even more. So, absolutely, practical advice is always better than vague advice, in my experience.
All right. Daniel, is there anything you would like to comment on the module?
Um,
Modules. There's more than
the
one.
modules, because there's like 6 of them. um, no, the listening thing is interesting. Because like you said, the listening thing is something that both parties struggle with a lot, and I think it's a sign of how good my experience is with. I mean, I guess it's a sign of how good my parents are, because I didn't listen to them a lot, and I have suffered many consequences because of it over the last 4 years now, and it's all been very continuous, and it's um, provided my entire high school life with just a crap ton of regrets. A lot of good experiences alongside it, which always felt weird to me because I never thought I was deserving of any of the good experiences I had, but because I had a lot of regrets, because I never listened and I didn't understand quite what what my parents were trying to say until somebody else had to explain it to me. But that's one of the other things that I I personally felt, and this is constructive criticism. I hope you don't. This isn't a knock on the program at all. I think it's a wonderful thing. I just, especially in my more recent experiences, I was hoping, and maybe you can include this in the sister program. I don't know, but there's an element, especially in your later teen years, into learning the incredibly hard truth. At least it was very hard for me that you need adult mentors outside of your immediate family. Like,
Mm,
so in my dad's case, it was his uncle Dale, um, and in my case, it's a few men at the parish that I'm at, um, But I've had different kinds of mentors too. I had three guys that I would hang out with all the time at my parish that I basically considered my older brothers because they were all older than me, and I've never had anyone like older than me to the point that they were at, so that I could look up to, that I was also like in an in-person communication with, on the regular. And there's also men like some of them, their fathers, other men at the parish that provide insight that I know my dad has told me before, but that I've never understood until somebody else said it. And I was really, really angry when people started telling me things that I finally understood, because I have always grown up with this idea that my parents are there for me in literally everything, and that mentors are never really necessary because I have my parents. Why the heck would I need a mentor? My parents are the best parents in the world. Why do I need somebody else to explain stuff to me? And it ties in with this, what I mentioned earlier, I think, about how different kids need, how different children and teens need different, have different needs that need to be met in different ways. People, teens meet people in their lives that are able to explain things to them in a way that just clicks better sometimes than the parents could ever do. My dad and I have already had a couple conversations where it's like, I'm almost outgrown. I've almost outgrown his advice, because anything else that he could say to me is isn't anything isn't anything I haven't already heard, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I've had I've been like I've been struggling to not accept this for like a year. And so it's I think it was I think it was at least like understated in the program just a little bit, that
Mm-hmm.
there's outside factors and outside people that can help a teen and a parent understand one another. And that could be through mentors, or just sometimes, my older brothers would just tell me, like I would explain something to them that happened at home, and they would just point out this, and this in a very simple way that took like 60 seconds to explain. And it's like, okay, this is the problem. This is how you fix it. Humble up, you stupid boy. And it's okay. We've all been there. And just, and all of a sudden I was just like, oh, now I feel really stupid. And I went back and apologized to my parents, and we made up and hugged and kissed and all that. And it's great. But it's something that needs to be addressed, is that part of that communication between parents and teens is aided by a series of other catalysts of just outside forces in general. The primary one being mentors that are outside of the immediate family, because they too have a reference point that's so vastly different from your parents' lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually found myself looking for people to tell me certain things that I knew probably had the least amount of experience in this area, which probably meant they could provide me with the most unbiased and truthful stance on the matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would start talking to people I hadn't talked to in years and just ask them, hey, this is a deep and serious question. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I need some help. I think you're the guy to ask. And he was the guy to ask. And that helped my communication with my parents, especially my mother, immensely. And I always had problems talking with my mother, because she and I talked on such a different wavelength. You'd think we were in another universe, right? And it was really helpful to finally figure out how to talk to my mom. And that was helped by other people, other moms, other dads, other teens my age that were struggling with their moms as well. And we found the answer together by asking other people. And it's just one of those things that, like, I think could be addressed more, and could have its own module, basically. It's something that could be expanded on more, I personally believe. But, that's just me.
I appreciate that, and I think that's such a fascinating idea. And our community is, they say it takes a village to raise a child, and I think that your experience is very much a testament to that. And I think it's important for parents and teens to know that, like, the relationship is ultimately paramount, but to understand each other better, maybe that you need to talk to different people and get different insights. so that you can strengthen your relationship with your parent, with your teen. But I'm curious because you spoke extensively about positive mentors, and I just noticed that so often in the teen years, teens have negative mentors. They don't realize it until later. Um, and so I'm just wondering, like, do you have any suggestions for how parents or teens could puzzle out? I mean, I think teens more than parents, if a mentor is a good influence or a bad influence.
If you approach a friend and say, hey, my parents are really confusing me. I don't know what's real anymore. I need some help. And the friend says, it's difficult because I have family members that would actively tell me their entire journey of separating from their parents. The key thing between a good mentor and a bad mentor is that a good mentor takes as a given in the equation the accountability of your parents being greater than, let's say, 1. Okay, so there's a baseline accountability, which is 1. So if because they're your parents and they've raised you your whole life, and like if you're not a bad person, which is pretty clearly, like you can pretty clearly find out whether or not you've had a screwed up childhood by the time you're like 16. And like if you know you haven't had a bad like life, but your parents are confusing you and you go to somebody and ask for help, if they can take your parents' credibility at in a positive integer, let's just use integers because I'm thinking in math right now, that's a good thing because they are not discrediting your parents and they're not discrediting you. That's a great start because if the mentor is like, oh yeah, your parents are like smoking crack, and that's a negative accountability, and that is typically what will cause a teen to go completely astray. And only in extreme cases, I would say, and rarely, statistically speaking, it is rare that both your parents are like actually smoking crack and they're out of their minds, and you really should like leave. Because, and I mean, of course there's all these kinds of parents that teach their kids all these bad things, but it's difficult as a kid to root all that out when you've been raised on it.
Totally.
So, and you would be put in situations anyways to where those kind of good influences wouldn't be telling you, they wouldn't be telling you to how do I say this? The good influences just wouldn't be there. If both of your parents were bad and you had been raised on the bad from the get-go, the good would not be there. If the parents had like any ounce of intelligence, which if they're that bad, they probably have more intelligence than you think. So I would say that the key thing between a good mentor and a bad mentor is that the good mentor will accept your parents' credibility and the bad one will not. I have a very close family member who was a very close family member, and she had this issue with her parents that multiplied into multiple issues, and I tried to help, and I was a feeble attempt to help because she had already been taken under the wing and influence of many people that told her, yeah, your parents are crazy and their religious views completely out the door. You should join us. And she has become quite a bad person, I would say. And it's disappointing, and I hope she comes back, I guess. But I would think that it's I know I've overtalked this point a lot to the point where now Kiera's camera is frozen, and I can't tell if Miguel's is frozen either because he's not moving. Oh, he is moving. Okay, so Kiera's dead again, I guess.
Yeah, I think she might be dead.
Oh my gosh, there's a second
Hi.
Kiera.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to wrap
Sorry
up
about
soon.
that.
So, as
Yeah.
one last question, do you have any question for us? As that is an Idiots on the Airwave podcast question.
Yeah, I guess, like, what are you guys' goals going forward for your podcast? Do you have any visions?
We have yet to decide. I think it's.
Oh, no.
I still have to get this guy to agree to like record every week once summer starts, so that we can promote the crap out of this and actually get going.
Busy.
Yeah, I'm
That's
busy
valid.
too.
Yeah, number 1 goal, money. Number 2 goal, money. Number 3 goal. We'll
People
see.
to talk with. We need more guests.
Okay. Nice.
If you know anybody, just send them our way if they want to talk for an hour and a half.
Sounds good. I will let you know. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was fun.
Thank you for coming. All of the details to her website and other social media. I don't have social media, so I don't know which other ones there are. Will be linked in the description. Go check it out. Go reserve your spot for the course, and pay whatever money she asks you to.
I don't care how much it is. It's worth it. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's pretty cheap. I'm only charging 127. So
See,
Let's go.
you're basically losing money on this. I mean,
hey, if there's one parent and teen out there that I can help, it makes it worth it. So, yeah, that's my goal.
all right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you, Daniel, for also being here. We will see you guys all next time. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.